So far, we've just been talking about these data in the abstract as an interesting scientific fact. But do you think that these data could actually explain certain aspects of contemporary political life? For example, we see this spectacular success of the Bush administration in getting votes from all sorts of different groups. Do you think that that success might be able to be understood in terms of this system justification theory?
Yeah, I do think so, and I think frankly that a lot of liberal and democratic pollsters and social scientists and so on have for a number of years been overly optimistic about, using terms like the coming Democratic majority and so on, based purely on demographic factors, as if members of disadvantaged groups are going to simply realize that it's in their self-interest, for example, to elect Democrats over Republicans, whether it's in their economic interest or if they're members of racial or ethnic minorities, whether it's in their interest as a member of a minority group to choose Democrats over Republicans. Again, I would never say there's no effect of self-interest, but I think Democrats lost a lot of elections that they probably could have or should have won because they simply trusted the demographics to determine the outcome. And I think there's a lot more going on to people's political attitudes and ideologies than just demographic variables. There are social and psychological factors. There are system-justifying tendencies. People want to feel good about their country. They want to, at times, I think, overlook its flaws or its shortcomings. They want positive messages. They want often as in talking about the survey results I just mentioned before from the General Social Survey, many members of low-income groups actually subscribe to quite conservative economic beliefs and principles, as well as social and cultural attitudes that actually end up maintaining the status quo rather than challenging it. As you know, Thomas Frank wrote a very popular and very controversial book about this called "What's the Matter with Kansas," and it was criticized in a lot of different ways by political scientists and others, and probably many of those specific criticisms were right. But his basic point, his basic message, that members of disadvantaged groups frequently will actually support conservative elites whose policies actually have consequences that are detrimental rather than beneficial for them. The question is why. I don't think he got the why exactly right, and I think that system justification theory in its motivational account has something to say about that.
So do you think you could then gain some insight into how it happens that some people have the opposite approach? So if you consider the system challenging people as opposed to the system justifying people, can we understand now those individual differences and explain what makes certain people be more system challenging?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think one way to do it is to think about what are the advantages or the benefits or the psychological motives or functions that system justifying attitudes serve. And we focus so far on three major classes: epistemic, existential, and relational motives. And I don't want to use a lot of jargon, but the basic point is that we think that system justification serves epistemic needs to achieve certainty, enclosure, and structure and order in thinking about one's social and political environment. We think that system justifying ideologies and beliefs also serve existential functions of making people feel safe and secure, and also relational functions in terms of solidarity and sharing reality with other family members, friends, and so on who have system justifying needs of their own. So are there people for whom these needs are not as salient, either for temporary situational reasons or for more long-term chronic or dispositional reasons? Absolutely there are. And by the way, this helps to explain why those who are fighting for social change frequently don't come from the most disadvantaged groups, because those groups live in circumstances that are highly threatening, and uncertainty, if you're very low income, for example, is an extremely aversive experience, and anything you can do to minimize that uncertainty and threat, I think you'll do, and that means ideologically as well as materially. And rather, it's frequently members of, for example, the middle class who are less threatened and whose lives are less full of uncertainty, who can tolerate the kind of ambiguity and uncertainty and not knowing what will happen if you engage in protest, collective action, demonstrations, push for change. Some people are risk seekers. Some people are so tolerant of ambiguity that they seek it out. High openness to new experiences, kinds of people. In terms of personality characteristics, one of the biggest predictors in terms of personality traits of liberal, system-challenging orientations is what's called openness to new experiences.
So ironically, what would actually make people most rebel against the system is if they started to be more comfortable or secure, unthreatened.
I think so. Yeah, I think that that's the case empirically, and I think there is a sense in which that's ironic. Yeah.
So, what can you tell us something about some of the experimental studies you've done that look at these individual differences, about the difference, say, between liberal people and more conservative people?
Sure. I mean, that's another kind of major aspect of our research, is looking at both dispositional and also situational factors that affect political orientation. That is, that are associated with one's self-placement on a left-right or liberal-conservative continuum. And we, a few years back, did a major review of all the studies that had been done in psychology and political science and sociology over a 44-year period between 1958 and 2002, including studies that came from 12 different countries involving 88 different research samples, over 22,000 individual cases or participants, and we found quite robust results that held up over that long period of time and across those different countries, that psychological needs to manage uncertainty and threat are positively correlated with politically conservative or right-wing orientation, or negatively correlated with liberal or left-wing orientation. So whereas people who want needs for structure, order, closure, who prefer a lack of ambiguity over uncertainty and ambiguity, those people are more likely to be conservative. People who are more open and tolerant of ambiguity and uncertainty, maybe even like it to some extent, tend to be more liberal.
What actually makes people rebel against the system, in part, is a willingness to accept a certain kind of uncertainty. It's not as though people who rebel against the system are just rebelling against the system because they prefer a different kind of certainty, a certainty that the system is wrong, as opposed to a certainty, say, that the system is right.
Well, I mean, I think different people are motivated to engage in social change efforts for different reasons. So some people might have a very specific alternative system in mind that they think is more just or more fair or something like that. But in terms of the actual motivation to explain why some people are willing to try to really push for change and others aren't, I think absolutely a tolerance for uncertainty is a must. And it probably is playing a motivating role. Some people even like chaos, and that it can be a motivational force to engage in protest or collective action, especially non-normative forms of collective action.